All right, another updated video on the 36 projects we've been working on. It's been a while, been a long, strange year, and I haven't spent a whole lot of time out here. In fact, a few weeks ago we had kind of a windstorm come through the area, and my garage roof started leaking in several spots, 10 or 12 spots. It was dripping, even on the car. So Dad and I got up on the roof and re-roofed all 3 bays just this last couple of weeks. That took up some time. And I've been spending some time helping my brother with his kitchen remodel. So I haven't been out here much. I'm still working on this corner, cut out a little rust area, and fabricated a little corner for it. We're going to weld it back together. But it's going to be a little while. I'm just tinkering on this thing. You know, I can find a day or two here and there, but it's going to be summertime before this is back on the road, I imagine. All right, so this week, this episode of our project, I'm going to get into proper body work. I have all the major welding operations on this body done. I've replaced some rust spots. These 2 areas of the front cowl were rusted out, as well as this lower sill. And I welded in the floor pans, but there's nothing else major I have to weld on. Just some minor things. I'm going to touch up a couple of holes here and there. I've got a few screw holes that I'm going to zap shut. A couple of spots here and there that need to be zapped shut, but nothing major. So that means I'm going to move on to proper body work, sanding and straightening of the metal before we paint it. And we have a few tools here that I'm going to be using. You just have to keep in mind that a dent is really just a stretched area of the metal. And what you're trying to do with the dent is you're trying to shrink it. You're trying to shrink the metal back into shape. And you can't necessarily do that very easily cold. You have to add some heat to the operation. And there's a variety of ways to do that. You can use just a torch, heat it up, throw a cold rag on it, and that shrinks it up. Or while it's hot, you can push it around into shape. If you use just a dolly and a hammer, you know, most of you out there are familiar with just a dolly and a hammer. And if you have a dent that goes in or out, you're going to hammer on it. You're going to put a dolly here and hammer on it that way, and that only works to a small degree without adding heat. If you hit the piece of metal directly on the dolly, that stretches it and will add to your dent one way or the other. If you hit off of your dolly, if you have a high spot, you put your dolly there and you hit around the dent, that can potentially push metal back into the stretched area, but it's easier if you add heat to the situation. And that's what I'm going to show you here on this front cowl. When I welded this in, the heat from the weld caused it to warp a little bit. It warped in. So when you run your hand down here, you can feel that this line goes in and comes back out. So it's stretched in the inward direction. And how we're going to start fixing that is I'm going to add heat to it, we're going to push it out, and once we start getting high spots, then we can heat just the high spots and shrink it with some cold water, or tap on it. And we can add heat to the high spots with a shrink disc. It's just a piece of metal that you add to a grinder. And as it spins, it hits the high spots and heats them up real good, then you just add some cold water to it. I have a Spitznagel, which is your welding gun that zaps a pin directly to the metal, and you can use that pin to pull. It also has a heating tip to it. You add a tip to it and you can just zap and it will heat up just one little spot if you're working on it. And so with a variety of these tools, we're going to get this as straight as we can. And I'm not perfect. We're going to add probably a little bit of body filler and sand it smooth. But we're going to see how straight we can get it first. And we'll just work our way up. We start sanding all this off. We're going to look for any highs and lows. A bunch of the body work, I don't know if it's been done, but it's fairly straight. The guy we bought it from had chopped the top and started on the body. Fairly rough where he chopped it. I got to deal with those. But overall, it's a very straight body, which makes it a lot easier. All right, so we're doing a little bit of welding tonight. Remember, the first thing you want to do when you attach this thing is not just... Alright, so as I welded that, I had a couple of holes I wanted to tack up. The heat generated, I was able just to push that line out, and it straightened it up quite a bit. I'll grind the welds off, and we'll start fine-tuning that seam. Alright, well I'm still working on this dent right here. Where I patched this in, whenever you use a MIG welder on a panel, it just, when you zap it, it tends to warp pretty good. So this whole line was in a little bit. And you can tell by putting a straight edge on it, you can tell that this whole panel is curved all the way up here. So it needs to continue that curve down to this bottom crease. but you can see there's a indentation right there on the weld line. So I'm just going through with this Spitznagel and putting on hole points, and once I get it tacked on, I put a little bit of heat on with a torch, and then that expands it, pull it out, cool it down while putting pressure on it, and it's pulling it out as we go. So what I'm doing here is I'm drilling out the 3 holes for the door hinges. Because I replaced this corner here, I replaced the outside skin and covered up the bolt holes. I've also got to notch in a section where I can slide the hinge in, and then we'll bolt it. That's what I'm working on now. working on these hinge bolts here. The original bolt, it has a pretty tall head on it, and when the door closes, the door frame is hitting the head and not closing all the way. So I'm grinding them down, but what that is also doing is giving it an older look. It doesn't look like a modern bolt head. Grinding them all down, polishing them, and then when we paint it, it'll blend in and it'll look like more of an authentic bolt. So we're grinding with the grinding wheel and then using the pad to polish them up a bit. There. You can see that they're considerably more shallow. They don't stick out so far, so when I close these doors, this side of the door frame won't touch them. Alright, so we're working on these doors right now. I'm trying to kind of roughing in, fitting the doors to the body. These haven't been really properly fit to this body since it was chopped. We just kind of drove it, you know, kind of roughed it together. But we're trying to line up all the gaps. Some of these gaps are going to have to be fixed through welding or some body work. But some of the gaps have to be fixed through bending the hinges a little bit and tweaking the body with some shims or body mounts. Adjusting the body a little bit tends to help with these lines. So the first thing I'm going to do is I noticed that part of this door can be welded a little bit better here at the bottom corner. The skin is coming off of the frame just a little bit, so I'm going to weld that corner, and then we're going to clean up all the hinges and tweak them a little bit, bend them. There's really no adjustments in the bolts to the body, and the bolts to the door have been welded. There is no bolts to the door. The hinges have been welded right to the door. So very limited on how I can adjust these doors, but we're just going to start working at it. You can see how the hinges here have just been welded to the door by the previous guy that was working on this for us. Don't know how I feel about that. I mean, I'd probably rather have these bolted in so I can have a slight amount of adjustment there, but it is what it is for now. And this corner is worse than I thought it was. It actually needs to be repaired, replaced. I'm gonna have to cut this out. This whole edge right here is rusted and broken right down to about here. So I'm gonna have to work on this corner for a while. have the rust cut out that I wanted to get rid of, and we'll start cutting a patch piece to go in here. Probably do it in a couple of pieces. Clean this up a bit, and then we'll have a piece come around here, and then we'll have the top piece come on. Weld it all together and sand it down, and make sure that this skin gets pulled up a little bit, and find the right contour for it. Kind of piecing together a corner here, make a little template of the area I need to patch, and cut it out of a piece of metal, and I'm gonna shape it, and we got a little plug weld hole here that'll weld right to a brace. So I'm just picking away at it, one little piece at a time. We'll have this corner put back together, sand it, paint it, it'll look nice. Here's the end piece that I cut out to patch this in, notched it for, and drilled a couple of plug weld holes. So we'll stitch around the outside here and then plug weld it all together. And we'll sand it all, and it'll turn out pretty nice. There's your update for our 36 Ford. I'll try to come back with another update here whenever we have enough material to put something together. One of these days soon, this will be driving, so we can just find the time to spend out here. Anyway, check you later. Bye.